It's Don here from the board. Thanks for coming along and checking out this video. So this is the second part of trying to make a 40% wrist rest. If you haven't seen the previous one, there should be a card that's going to float around somewhere that you can click on to check out. But basically what we did in part one was we took this MV44 keyboard, we took a bit of timber here, a bit of pallet timber, and measured and cut it to suit a 40% keyboard, and we started cleaning it down. We started off with the old classic wooden jack plane that I've got here, this beast, but I'm having a bit of trouble with adjusting it using the hammer because there's no micro adjust on it because this is quite old school. So the end result has been that there has been a lot of tear out that's happened on the surface of this piece of timber. So that's kind of where we got to in part one. So part two is we're just going to keep going on this journey, and I'm going to switch over to my size 4 Sontax plane here. It's still reasonably sharp. I haven't actually sharpened it since I gave it the original sharpening. I probably should give it a touch up, but it feels still pretty good for the moment. And we'll try and get some of that tear out. Depending on how we're going with time as well, I might also maybe try doing something with this 151 spokeshave as well to maybe try and produce a bit of an angle, or maybe we'll just use the size 4 because it's got a good width for kind of shaping this actual wrist rest to have a bit of an angle on it. So let's keep going. So what I've done here just on my work surface is, because I don't have my bench stop actually mounted to the bench, I've just got it mounted to a block of wood here. It's reasonably sized for this piece that I'm working with, and to stop it from moving around, I've just pinned it in by clamping 2 bits on the end so that the actual clamps are lower than the block of wood itself, so I'm not likely to hit the clamps. So with this, there is a micro adjust on these. You can turn that dial to advance the blade or retract the blade. So we will start off and see where that's at. There's a bit of a shaving there, but I might back it off a little bit and see. Well, that was unexpected. So obviously I need to make sure that's a bit more centered. So I'm not sure if I'm just going against the grain right now, which is what's causing that rip out. So let's just switch it to the other side and see if it's any better or worse. So I think my work holding is not working as intended. We'll try and fix that up a bit, get that nice and tight. Okay, so is that, I think my blade's got a bit of an angle happening on it, so if I'm just going to try and adjust that, and let's just back it out, that making it come out more or less. Less. Okay, so I was going the wrong direction. Always helpful if you get your plane blade to advance in the right direction. So just things that a beginner woodworker needs to make sure that they have it right. Okay, so now that I've got it going in the correct direction that I want it to go, let's see if that will make life any better. Now, just by looking at that tear out, I think the grain should be running that way, but we will discover very quickly think. Once we start taking still advancing it quite gently right now. Okay, so feels like it's starting to catch now. Yeah, there we go. I'm getting some very fine shavings there, so I want to try and make my blade a little bit more centered if I can. Okay. Now, is that actually... That's biting where I'm starting it from, so it's leaving all these bits in. Yeah, that's better. That seems like that other way was possibly the wrong way. That. That side is definitely digging in more. I'll try and get a more even pass. There we go. Starting to rain. Just advance it a fraction more. Well, we're definitely starting to take out a lot of that tear out, which is really good. Very positive. And hopefully we're not going to introduce too much more. just going to take that one off because it's getting a bit uncomfortable in the hand with the glove. Really only taking it from that side now, so I've gone too far. Let's try and bring it back a little bit more level. There we go. Whoop. It's a good size shaving, but it's so fine an adjustment. Alright, let's just back it off fractionally. There we go, a little bit easier to push through. Yeah, look at that. So this side is a bit rougher, but this side's actually starting to come pretty good. There's a little bit of tear out here around where that knot is though. So, and there's still some that's kind of happening over there. If I keep backing that out a little bit so it's really nice and light, we might be able to smooth some of that out. Yeah, that knot there is starting to pose a bit of a problem. Oh, it's catching. Back that out some more. I don't want to ruin what I've just done by going too hard. Okay, so look, for now, for what it is, I think it's okay. There's a huge gouge mark through that though, which is obviously coming from probably a bit of shaving that's actually got stuck in it. But I think that blade's probably going to need a bit of a sharpen very soon. This side I'm kind of okay with where it's at, but right now in terms of its general thickness, I'm starting to actually cup it. So this side's a bit bigger because I've been focusing very heavily on this side to try and get out a lot of that rip out that was on that side. But, you know, it's okay in terms of just the roughness anyway. At this point in time, we're going to need to also clean up the two sides of that before we start to get into a bit of the finer shaping. Like you can see on this side, because I've been focused so heavily on it, this is much bigger on that side than this side, whereas I haven't taken so much on that side. Now if I try and go in the opposite direction and focus on this side, am I going to do a lot of rip out against the grain or not? was the other direction actually, against the grain. Ooh, there's some really fine knottiness. You can see these dots in here. Now that would create some really lovely sort of visual texture if I can get it right, and not destroy this as I'm going along. Look at that, that shaving just got in the way and probably caused a bit of damage. Okay, let's just have a look. Yeah, it is a little bit thinner now. Probably not as thin. You can definitely see that side's thinner than that side, so that's going to be a lot of work to get that down. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to try and clean up the edge of it. So I'm just putting that in. That will allow me to get edge on like this. And look at that, it's cleaned up quite nicely, if I do say so myself. Although it is showing there is an imbalance in which way the blade is actually cutting, because one side is cutting, the other side is not cutting, so it's not straight. If I try and do it in the middle, and then the ends, that's just taken off some super fine curls, but we'll be able to swap that over anyway and check it on the other side. So that's really lovely, really lovely and smooth. So let's have a look. That didn't deviate it too badly. We'll just check with the square. Yeah, it's not too bad. I'm okay with that. So let's go to the other side. Now I do need to take a bit more off than the other side, because there's these big chunks that are not actually even, so I've got to take it quite a bit down by comparison to the other side to get this to be nice and smooth. Now while we're doing that, we just want to check that we're not going too much on one or the other, so we can make sure that it still tries to stay relatively flat. Of course, this being amateur hour, I'm not going to be too upset about it if it is obviously more canted. Just not ideal, that's all. Right, wow. Hitting things. Okay, so we're getting almost to the bottom of that one. That one's nearly fully out, which is good, but there's a bit of tear out happening there. So I do want to try and see if I can just switch sides on that. See if that will help clear up. Oh yeah, that was nice. Really nice. So obviously this is the right direction for grain, because it's just taken off these really full curls. I still have to learn to pick grain direction properly. But that is almost out, and this one up here is out. So just a few more, I reckon, and we will be pretty close. There's it's kind of like this chip here. Yeah, that bit's loose. That entire, there's like a crack there. That splinter is really dangerous. So I'm probably going to have to actually take quite a bit more out there. So we'll keep going. Nearly got it out. See, I was going much faster there because I knew I had a lot to take out, whereas earlier I was going a bit slower because I was trying to be gentle about it, not so aggressive. But if I know that there's a lot that needs to come off, I can be a bit more aggressive about it and not to be too fussed. So I've taken that off, but I've now started introducing a bit of a curve to this. That side is far lower, so I probably need to just smooth out this side. By lifting off a bit and checking that. Okay. All right, so let's get the square again. Let's have a look at that. Look, it's not perfectly square right now to the sides. Yeah, it's not fantastic, but I'm not really aiming for perfection right now since I'm still learning and developing. But really this is just a proof of capability, proof of concept. So we've got an uneven chunk of wood right now as really the solid cleaned up foundation to a wrist rest. Now at this point in time, what else do I want to work on and how do I want to work on this? So I don't have a shooting board yet, and a shooting board is designed to cut end grain. End grain is a bit tougher and harder, and I also don't have like a little block plane like a 110 or a 130 or a 210 palm type of thing. It's something that I probably would like to pick up at some point in time, but right now I just don't have one. What I do have is obviously the spokeshave, which might not do the job, and what I've also got is a I've got this. Oh yeah. So this is actually a number 80 Stanley cabinet scraper. This one hasn't actually been sharpened. You can see that it hasn't been anything really. It's got quite a bit of work on it that needs to be done to make this workable, but I'm just going to pick this side. So the purpose of a cabinet scraper is, as it sounds, you scrape surfaces with it. But if you do it correctly, it will give you a really lovely, smooth, glassy surface. So right now it is scraping. You can hear it scrape. And if I do it enough times, you might start to see some dust forming on this. The purpose of the scraper, well, if I do it, you can see maybe that there's some dust forming on the timber itself. So if you sharpen the scraper correctly, which obviously I haven't done anything to this one yet, it will actually give you a super clean, super smooth finish. But its design is not to cut. It's not meant to take large amounts of material away. So I still need a means of doing the ends. I don't think scrapers are really suitable for that. And I need a way of actually being able to clamp it to be able to do the ends, or to use a shooting board, which I would like to make a shooting board. I do have some things that I can use to make a shooting board with. So I've been to IKEA in the past, and I've picked up some bits and pieces and some sort of laminate board that will act as a smooth surface for a shooting board. I just haven't had the opportunity to try and put one together. So there are definitely things that are coming along that you'll probably see some videos with. But right now, what can I do with this besides, you know, not quite scraping it, which of course that will do. I can round off edges with this, so I could clamp it, and I could round off edges with this. So maybe let's try that. Now, this is not even, but honestly, if I'm just using this, if I'm just testing this and seeing how I do with this, I'm not too fussed. I'm not too fussed. So let us try and round off some edges. Now that's starting to come loose, but is that just because there's debris underneath? Probably. Okay, well, we'll see how that goes, but it could be just because the weight is uneven as well. Now that has got quite a lot of advancement on it, so let's just back that out. Okay. Look at that. That's really rough. I think that's against the grain. So let's try it this way. Yeah, it's definitely smoother. Nice. Not necessarily doing a great job with this, but it's therapeutic, it's fun. Certainly enjoying the experience of it. It's all part of building up some skills and having a good time with it. Now this angle is really awkward because of how I've clamped this. So what I might do is, I'm going to just remember that direction. I'm going to go the other way. Let's do it like this. Let's just brush some of that out of the way. Let's put that back in. We'll put that this way, and then we'll do this. That should be much better. Yeah, a lot more comfortable. It's an interesting feel about that. Of course, that's now getting in the way, so it's getting in the way of that end cut. Work clamping is definitely a challenge, that's for sure. See, that's still hitting it. This is when, if I can get this vise that I've done the other video on, then that would be really fantastic. So yeah, all right, let's just have a look at how that is. So yeah, you can see how I've kind of rounded that off now with just some of those cuts. It's not fantastic, but you know what, that's okay. Now this front bit, well, it's still got quite a sharp edge to it. So shall we take some of that off? Now the grain is going that way, so maybe if we pull it this way, then this won't get in the way. So we want to do this edge. No, that seems to be against the grain. That's tearing it out. Really should use a pencil and mark it, hey? But I did not. Hey, what are you doing, clamp? There we go. Now it's on this side that I want to do. Oh, look at that. That's still getting in the way. All right. There we go. Give that a little bit of rounding off. Okay, yeah, there we go. So now there's a little bit of a rounded off profile there on kind of both sides. Maybe not the world's best. Let's see if we can do it flat against the actual stop. Yeah, it kind of works. I'll do it. Yeah, like that. Or maybe I'll do it as a push instead. Can I do it by hand? It's really starting to get into hand carving or hand whittling if I'm doing that. Okay, so I've got a bit of an edge there. I could probably take the sanding pad and hand sand that as well. But this tear out down here, this tear out is still really, really bad. So maybe with the help of this, oh no, am I about to destroy all the good work I did? Maybe. Folly. Folly, folly, folly. I'm gonna back that off now. Completely lost track of the grain, and I'm potentially just destroying everything I've done. Shall I give it up? Shall I call it quits for now and just try and sand that out? So right now that is cutting quite deep. Okay, just brought that back down to nothing. Yep, starting to feel it bite now. There we go. Yeah, that's tearing. So it's definitely in the wrong direction. Look at that. As soon as you can get that grain right. Oh no! I just got and tore a massive chunk out. Well, dear watcher, you can now feel the agony and the ecstasy, I guess, of what it's like to be a beginner woodworker without having to spend the money, spending the time if you're watching this, but maybe you're not spending the calories. And maybe it's just because this pallet wood is just really terrible. Okay, I'm calling that at the moment, but getting quite a nice profile actually, to be honest. It is actually sort of thinning down. So there's my sanding block. And just going to use this torn and partially used bit of sandpaper because I actually don't know if I've got any more at the moment. But I'm just going to give this a light sand. Okay. So for now, this is not going to go and stick any major splinters in it, but I'm gonna call that semi-complete as far as just the simple shaping. Like I do have a slight angle there, a bit more there. It's relatively straight edged. I've got some curvature on that from using the spokeshave, and it only took me about 2 hours. Which, you know, if you're going to buy something like this, super simple, handmade with all this kind of work, it would be quite expensive, right? In terms of labor time, if it was somebody trying to make this for a profit. In terms of a project for fun and love, sure, that's a separate issue. But I guess, you know, using machines, using like a bandsaw, table saw, even a jigsaw to cut this would be way faster. But the end result, I guess, being the same piece of wood, if somebody sells something and says this is done by hand with hand tools, then you should at least try and appreciate that they might have go through this kind of process. They might have obviously a lot more skill than me and be able to do it faster, better, less mistakes. You know, their tools are probably sharper and they know what they're doing. They've got actual proper clamping methods and stuff like that. But at the same time, there's so much skill and experience involved in actually getting it to just something as simple form as this, if they've been working with hand tools. So I don't want to leave this here in this form just as this. Like, I could just start applying the finish on it right now and just call it quits. What I want to do is I'm going to park this piece of wood, and then I'm going to move back onto some tool related activities, so fixing this up. Now the funny thing is, I bought this Stanley 80 really cheap for what it is, for what it normally sells for, because I think the person who sold it actually didn't know what it was properly. They called it a spokeshave. I didn't really take too much advantage for them because how much they were asking for was a reasonable number. It was just quite cheap by comparison to what you find for ones in this condition. This is in excellent condition. So the funny thing is, I actually have a second Stanley 80 coming in the mail, which has damage to it. So these actual threaded holes here in the other one have been damaged, and they welded some nuts onto it to take the bolt size for it. And because of that, it's considered damaged, and it was being sold extremely cheap, like half the price of this. So I'm actually going to wait for that one to come in, restore that one, sharpen it, learn and practice with it, because then later on when I've got a bit more experience with that one, I can use this nicer one or have both sharpened up, in that way I can do more work without having to sharpen and reburr the actual blades. So that is what I want to do, because then I want to take that and try and finish this board, this wrist rest, to have a really great smooth finish. Because right now, while the camera might not necessarily pick it up, there's a lot of tracks in this from this blade, which tells me that there's a lot of nicks in this. Like, you can probably see it. I can start seeing that there's wavering in here, probably from hitting the knots and stuff. So I need to resharpen and refinish that blade as well. But I want to try and get a really lovely finish on this, just as part of that learning journey. Of course, I'll need to build the shooting board so I can shoot the edges, and of course save up money and get a small block plane potentially. Or if I get this one nice and sharp, I can run this in the shooting board position, which kind of goes, you know, like this, to actually trim up the edges. So you can kind of hear that already, because it is actually trying to nick the end fibers of this. But right now, because it's unguided, it's not actually guaranteeing that it's going to be 90 degrees square, which is obviously pretty important if you can manage it. So that's where I'm going to end this video, part 2 for making this board, this wrist rest for a 40% keyboard. We'll probably see some more videos that are going to be tool related, cleaning, restoring, maybe even trying to build a shooting board. But we will come back to this. We will come back to this. Other things that I do want to try now that, you know, I start to have a bit more experience in cleaning up boards and cleaning them, planing them and stuff like that, is dovetails. I want to start doing dovetail kind of practice to make maybe just little boxes. And then moving from boxes, I can go from boxes to trays, to potentially artisan holders, to part holders, and that kind of stuff. So there's a lot of potential. I just got to get these basics down. So I'm going to end it there. Thank you very much for joining me on this journey. I hope you enjoyed it. And if it's a bit of a deviation from what you're expecting on this channel, well, I hope you do keep tabs, because if I do have opportunity to check out other things that are more direct keyboard related, I will. And if you don't have the bell button or subscription to the channel, then you might miss out on checking out that content. If you're here because you're seeing woodworking and you're enjoying it, then give me a thumbs up, like button, subscribe button, and all that jazz. Well, I know I've already said that I'm ending the video like 3 or 4 times now, but it's going to happen now. So thanks very much. And of course, as usual, until next time, happy clacking.